Welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, July 24th, 2024, or 072424, if you're keeping notes. And today is National Tequila Day. Yes, sir. A lot of people on board with that. Make your plans now, because you may need a shot or two or more by tonight, especially if your plans include flying. Some airports and some airlines, mainly Delta, still experiencing big problems and big cancellations as a result of last week's global technical outage. Remember that? Said to have been caused by CrowdStrike, whose stock has taken a big hit, by the way.
We might be on a 3 o'clock flight, or we might be on a flight in 2 days, so.
There's bags everywhere, and there's still families just laying on here on the ground since Friday.
My flight, it got canceled at 2 p.m., got put back on time, delayed, and I showed up to the gate and it got canceled again.
Oh, what a nightmare. The Department of Transportation is now investigating Delta Airlines, which canceled hundreds of flights yesterday after canceling more than 1,100 on Monday. Thousands have been canceled in the last several days. Canceled, not to mention the thousands of delays. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says the investigation is due to all the disruption and the surge in customer complaints about Delta.
People being on hold for hours and hours trying to get a new flight, people having to sleep on airport floors, even accounts of unaccompanied minors being stranded in airports, unable to get on a flight.
And President Biden returned to the White House yesterday, nearly a week after testing positive for COVID. His doctor, Kevin O'Connor, the same guy who kept telling us he was fine physically and mentally, said the president has tested negative and his symptoms have resolved. President Biden is scheduled to address the nation tonight about his decision to drop out of the race. Before that, former President Donald Trump, who you're going to hear from in just a moment, has a rally in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina, a city I recently lived and worked in and love, except for the fact that someone gets shot and killed every single day. I'm not exaggerating. Beautiful city, terrible gun violence. If Kamala Harris ends up asking North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper to be her running mate, as has been rumored, hopefully that is something that he'll be asked to address. Anyway, the Trump rally is at 6 o'clock tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern. As always, you can watch it on Newsmax. Newsmax host and former advisor to President Trump, Sebastian Gorka, spoke with the former president yesterday about the resignation of Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle.
Mr. President, earlier today, the disgraced director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle, tendered her resignation in a very strange statement where she first states that she is hanging up her spurs, but then doesn't mention why. She simply talks about recent events. The day after they tried to murder you, Mr. President, I wrote a piece in Breitbart where I said this was inevitable. This was the assassin who had to happen because the Democrats have normalized violence. They've called you a threat to democracy for 8 years now. I must ask you in front of your loyal Newsmax viewers and American voters across the nation, do you feel safe with her having left? And do you trust, for example, the FBI who raided your home to investigate what happened in Butler and to get to the bottom of it, Mr. President?
Well, I just heard that she is out, and she, I don't think, had much of a choice. That was a pretty bad day by any circumstance. Forget about me for a second. We lost a great patriot, Corey, and two wonderful gentlemen were badly hurt. This was bad, and there are some other less serious injuries, too. This was a bad day for this country, and certainly they should have had people on that rooftop, and they should have told me that there was a problem. I guess maybe they didn't know or something. They haven't gotten to the bottom of that yet. It should have happened, I would say, within an hour, not 9 days, 10 days. So she was, seems to be inevitable that she left. And I don't know if she was fired or she left. Probably she left because Biden doesn't ever fire anybody. He didn't fire anybody for Afghanistan. He doesn't fire anybody for anything. So, which is one of his problems. So that was a rough time. Do I feel safe? Yeah, I have to feel safe. Otherwise, I guess I wouldn't be able to do this stuff. I made a rally 3 days later in Michigan, and it was incredible. That was an incredible rally, one of the best we've ever had, and the love is so unreal. Now, they have really beefed it up. They should have beefed it up before. I know that we've been asking for them to beef it up. You know, we have crowds of 40, 50,000, 60,000 people. In New Jersey, we had 107,000 people, and when you have crowds like that, you need more people for the crowd. Forget about me, and for me too, but as president, for any president. But you have to have more people, and I know that our people have been asking for more people consistently and not getting them.
Now, former Director Cheatle specifically said in her testimony that recent requests for extra security from the Trump campaign were met. You remember that? The new acting director of the Secret Service, by the way, was appointed by DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas yesterday, a guy named Ronald Rowe, currently the deputy director. All right, back to Sebastian Gorka and the former president.
She is apparently the anointed candidate. There are some on the conservative commentariat who say this is a far more dangerous opponent for you, the minority vote, the women's vote. Is it possible for Kamala Harris to separate herself from the disastrous Biden regime that she served as its deputy, for the dangerous incompetence she showed with regards to the border as the border czar? How do you think this opponent rates against the incumbent Joe Biden?
Well, I think it's polling about the same. I noticed I was 10 up and 11 up in polls, and I was about the same on Biden. A poll just came out where I was 11 up. So it's about the same on polls. I don't know that it stays there. It's very early. A lot of things happened in the meantime. This has been a very active period, to put it mildly. But I would say from the debate on, this has been a rather active period in the world of politics. The debate night was a very big moment. And then you had a series of events. And then, of course, you had last Saturday. That was a tough one. That was the shooting. That was real bad. And, you've had a lot of big things happen in the meantime. I think, look, she destroyed the city of San Francisco. She was the worst. She was the worst at everything. She was the worst vice president, and he was the worst president. By the way, he was the worst president we've ever had, and her ratings are lower than his ratings. So I don't know how she can do well, but maybe she can. It's a crazy world out there. She's terrible. You look at what happened to San Francisco, and a lot of people blame her. She was a prosecutor out there, and she was terrible, and she did a terrible job. San Francisco is a different place, not even livable in many ways. I hate to say that, but it's not even livable in many ways. They got to get that together. They're going to lose that city, and who would have thought 15 years ago you would have been saying something like that? And as you know, she was the border czar. And essentially, she never went to the border. She went once, but she went into a location where you would love to have dinner, very soft. There was a location where nothing was happening, and they knew that. So she essentially never went to the border. The border was the worst border anywhere in the world, probably in the history of the world, the most border. And I think you're going to have, by the time hopefully we get them out, you're going to have 20 million people coming in, many from prisons, many from jails and prisons. If you think of it, there is a slight difference. And also many from mental institutions and even insane asylums are emptying out into our country. And also many, many terrorists are pouring into our country. And she's the worst border person in history. And you ask guys like Tom Homan or Brandon Judd, they will tell you there's never been anything like it. She was the border czar. She knew nothing about the border. The border is the most devastating thing to happen to this country in so long. And I'd put up there also the way we withdrew in Afghanistan. I mean, there's so many things. Nothing good happened during this administration. Nothing.
Well, let's talk about the foreign affairs. When you were the president, when we were in the White House as part of your team, not only was America safe, the world was stable. No new wars for 4 years.
Right.
Israel has experienced the greatest loss of life since the Holocaust on October the 7th. We've just heard that the vice president is going to boycott the president, the prime minister of Israel's visit to Washington, D.C. You will be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday. How bad is it for international affairs and our allies, such as Israel, that Biden is the nominee for the Democrats?
Well, it's amazing, actually, that any Jewish person, any person that is Jewish, frankly, that has even a little respect. Because, in this country, a lot of Jewish people are not big fans of Israel, which is something that they've never been able to explain to me. But that any Jewish person or any person that believes in Israel and loves Israel can even think about voting for a Democrat. Obama was horrible. He is horrible. Biden is horrible. And they're not good for anyone else either. Actually, in Michigan, the Palestinians, nobody wants to vote for him. Neither side wants to vote for him. And that's probably one of the many reasons he got out. I mean, the obvious reason was obvious to all. It was a big con game. Keeping him in was a con game. But, no, it's pretty amazing that she refuses to meet with him. And they asked whether or not they could meet with me, and I said, certainly. You got to meet with both sides. You got to get it settled. You got to get it finished. You got to get it over with. They've got to do their job. October 7th would have never happened. You were in the administration. October 7th would have never happened if we were there, Sebastian. Okay, I say plural. Yeah. But if I was president, October 7th would have never, ever happened. And by the way, Russia would have never attacked Ukraine either. And we wouldn't have inflation.
Former President Donald Trump on Newsmax with former White House advisor Sebastian Gorka. And you heard right. Kamala Harris, the vice president, is boycotting the Israeli prime minister's visit to Washington, even as the prime minister meets with President Biden tomorrow. Benjamin Netanyahu will address Congress today, meet with President Biden tomorrow, then fly to Florida, as Sebastian mentioned, to meet with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Now, today, there are reports from ABC News that Harris may herself meet with the prime minister after boycotting his address to Congress. Trump said, if you're Jewish, how can you possibly vote for Biden or Harris? Her husband, First Gentleman Doug, is Jewish. He went to a Jewish school in New Jersey, had a bar mitzvah. He can't be happy with his wife's administration's handling of Israel. Kamala, meanwhile, held her first campaign rally for president in Wisconsin yesterday, where she immediately attacked the former president and his running mate on abortion and on Project 25. This is going to be the whole platform.
We'll stop Donald Trump's extreme abortion bans because we trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
Okay. So there are no extreme abortion bans. Overturning Roe v. Wade put the control of abortion back in the hands of each individual state. That's it. Donald Trump has nothing to do with it after that, depending upon which state you live in. She also mentioned Project 25, which Trump said at his rally this past Saturday. Again, Project 25 is not his platform. It's a plan put forward by the Heritage Foundation. It's not the plan put forward by the Trump campaign or the RNC, which outlined its agenda prior to the convention. But this is what they're going to beat into everybody over the next couple of months. And then she said this.
I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week.
And that I can't wait to see. What record does she have? That is really funny. I told you the other day about the Republican PAC for Nikki Haley that renamed itself Nikki Haley Voters for Biden. Then Monday, they came out and backed Kamala Harris. They're now called Nikki Haley Voters for Harris. Well, Nikki Haley sent the organization a cease and desist. So we'll see where that goes. John Rich and Elon Musk, both of whom I follow on X, posted yesterday. One may have been reposting the other, and then I reposted it. But the post said, Kamala Harris is the border czar. Period. End of story. That one fact in itself, as I've been saying for years now, should be more than enough to disqualify her from office. That one fact, not gift her the nomination. Meanwhile, President Biden praised the former Secret Service director yesterday after she resigned, as members of his own party were demanding her resignation. This is Kimberly Guilfoyle on Frontline with Carl Higbie.
Kimberly Guilfoyle, host of the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show on Rumble. KG, this has been just the longer it goes, the worse it gets.
Oh, it's absolutely despicable. And what a sham that whole situation was yesterday. Yes, the Secret Service director, resigned, but that's just not good enough. We need a House Select Committee to get to the truth. And quite frankly, Cheatle should probably be facing more and more scrutiny, because the more we learn, let's ask ourselves, did she lie? Did she perjure herself under oath yesterday? And a number of the congressmen and congresswomen are calling for that investigation, examining the facts, the reports, and the transcripts to make that determination. A former president of the United States was almost murdered, assassinated under her watch. She has his blood on her hands, and there must be a full investigation and accountability. The American people deserve it. This can never be allowed to happen again.
I completely agree, but Joe Biden, well, I should say who's ever controlling Joe Biden's stationery account. All right, it says, Jill and I are grateful to Director Kim Cheatle for her decades of public service. She has selflessly dedicated and risked her life to protect our nation and blah, blah, blah. As a leader, it takes honor, courage, and incredible integrity to take full responsibility for an organization tasked with one of the most get bent. This woman almost got somebody killed, and this is just like a fest of look at how great she is.
Basura. It's garbage. It's garbage. Just like his presidency, just like his administration, just like his shameful vice president. This is why the American people are disgusted and fed up, and they show up in record numbers to support the greatest president this country has ever had, President Donald J. Trump. And I am telling you something, the Secret Service needs to do a hard look and examine what happened, what transpired. She failed and was unable to answer why the Secret Service did not question the gunman after he was flagged, as a suspicious person, and they were alerted. Why didn't they do something about it? This could have been presented, but for the grace of God, President Trump wouldn't be alive today. And that is a very serious thing. And the media wants to sweep over it and just move on to the coronation of Kamala Harris. And it's disgraceful.
What's even more disgraceful, though, is the fact that these people are showing up. Yesterday, Cheatle had a whole binder with 0 answers. Today, Pennsylvania State Commissioner Colonel Paris did not have a proper timeline. Listen to what he said.
A member of PSP received a phone call and a text message from members of ESU, and I know from an interview that was immediately relayed in the command post to the Secret Service.
The Secret Service had this information that there was a suspicious individual. He had used a rangefinder, which made him even more suspicious, and this was all reported to them prior to the President Trump being allowed on the stage to speak?
I believe, again, I'll defer to when the president came out. I know that was probably 20 to 25 minutes before 11 hours.
Nobody seems to know anything.
It's terrible. They couldn't keep track of 6 kids in kindergarten. They just couldn't. They'd be like, I don't know where they went. What's happening at recess? That's how pathetic this was. It's embarrassment to our country. How can anyone be safe? Any member of Congress, let alone any sitting or former president. They were also unable to say, why didn't Secret Service put anyone on the roof where the shooter was, or how many agents were present at the rally, or whether the gunman acted alone? She specifically failed to answer those questions.
Kimberly Guilfoyle on Frontline with Carl Higbie. That's weekday afternoons, 5 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. Followed by The Record with Greta Van Susteren, who had a must-hear conversation with Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
Democrats are perfectly willing to be complete and total hypocrites. When Donald Trump was president, there was discussion about ending the filibuster. Every single Democrat in the Senate, all of them said, no, you can't end the filibuster. It would be the end of democracy in America. As soon as Joe Biden became president, virtually every one of them flipped on a dime. They said, we want to end the filibuster right now. Out of the 51, only 2 dared stand up and say no. 49 of them said, never mind what we said. Now we want to end the filibuster. And by the way, all 49 of them will flip immediately if there's a Republican majority and a Republican president. And so, it really is, I think, sad that we have seen the Democrat Party get radicalized. And you and I have talked about this before. I think Donald Trump broke their brains. And I don't think it's good for our country not to have 2 healthy, rational political parties engaged in discourse. I think the Democrat Party has gotten really, really extreme. And I think Kamala Harris embodies that.
All right, are you at all suspicious? I must admit I am. It's, of course, there's so many things going on right now. But the House asked for a transcript of the ghostwriter for President Biden, and it couldn't be found. President Biden jumps out of the race on Sunday, and now suddenly that transcript can be found. Look, at some point we just have way too many coincidences.
Look, Greta, I actually tweeted about this morning. So the story that's been reported is that DOJ suddenly, quote, discovered, and that's the word they used, discovered the transcript. And magically they discovered it 48 hours after Joe Biden announces that he's out of the race. Merrick Garland spent 24 years as a federal judge. And when he was a judge, he actually had a reputation for being relatively non-political and nonpartisan. He has utterly destroyed that reputation. Merrick Garland has presided over the most political and partisan Department of Justice in our nation's history. That's done enormous damage to the rule of law. He has been the point of the spear, weaponizing the DOJ and the FBI to, number one, target the Biden White House's political enemies, and number two, to protect President Biden and the Biden White House's political allies. And I think that has done enormous damage to the country. I very much hope, if and when President Trump is reelected, that we see integrity restored to the Department of Justice and the FBI and federal law enforcement.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz on with Greta Van Susteren. This hasn't gotten enough attention because of everything else that's been happening the last several days, but New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, a Democrat, sent in a letter to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy that he will resign next month, this after being found guilty on 16 counts in a federal bribery and corruption trial. According to the letter obtained by NBC News, where Menendez's daughter is employed, so probably wasn't difficult to obtain, August 20th will be his final day in the Senate. He said he chose that day to give his staff members time to transition to other opportunities, other jobs. He didn't say if he gave his staff any of the gold, silver, or cash that he was found guilty of accepting. His sentencing is set for October 29th. He also said that he will appeal the ruling. Menendez is also under investigation by the Senate Ethics Committee. On Wall Street, Tesla stock down big today, about 10% after slightly disappointing earnings yesterday. Google's parent company, Alphabet, also disappointed analysts. It's trading lower, leading the NASDAQ and other markets lower. Be sure to keep up with all of the news today. There'll be plenty of it on Newsmax, Newsmax.com, and Newsmax Plus for the most complete lineup of all your favorite shows and guests. And don't forget the Trump rally, 6 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.